right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Charles Mofoan, as you saw in that last video. And for today, I'll be hosting you, but I'm not alone. I have Sheena with me. Sheena, welcome.
Thank you very much, Charles, and hello to everyone this afternoon.
All right, so we'll go straight into the program. Now, this is our first annual National Giving Summit for Nigeria. I know some other countries you have Giving Summit, but for Nigeria, this is the first time we officially or formally want to talk about generosity in its various forms, whether as social entrepreneurship, impact investment, volunteering, and all that. So this is the first time we'll be looking at it and see how can we deepen generosity in Nigeria. But in South Africa, I don't know if it's different, Sheena.
Yeah, so I mean, it's been interesting being on this side actually as part of the nonprofit world. We also had a Giving Tuesday campaign this year. And we certainly are, we still get a lot of our funding from sort of grant making organizations and foundations. And so we are still experimenting with crowdfunding. But, in this year where we've all been battling COVID, we've seen such an outpouring of support and from people who are sending in smaller amounts, which is really encouraging because it means it's coming from the communities that our participants come from. And so I do think we've definitely seen people take up that challenge from Giving Tuesday to show generosity in multiple ways, however you can do it. And in South Africa, it's a small movement, but I think it's growing.
All right. So for Africa generally, I think it is a good idea. And the fact that people are waking up to, let me say, to their responsibility, so to speak, instead of waiting for international funding all the time. So let's fund and solve our problems as Africans. And we have a great lineup of speakers here today. We have Dr. Kole Shetima from MacArthur Foundation. We have Oyebisi Oluseyi from Nigeria Network of NGOs. We have Kaja Sheila Wanto from Philanthropy Circuit. And we'll have more. We'll have Asha joining us soon from Giving Tuesday USA. Well, personally, I look forward to Asha talking about the giving climate in the US. So let's see, can we match it in Africa? Okay, so we'll have Dr. Kole Shetima joining us any moment from now. And yeah, we'll take it from there. So I'll just play Dr. Kole Shetima's profile, and after that, he will come on live. Stay with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this occasion, and I'm very excited and very happy to participate in this first ever Nigeria's celebration of generosity, the first generosity conversation. I'm very happy that we are starting this officially, but as we all know, we have been Nigerians have been generous all the time. So, whenever I meet young people and I teach at times when I have the opportunity, I ask people, do you know MKO Abiola? And of course, many people will just black out. They don't know MKO Abiola and other things. So I have to remind them about who MKO Abiola was, and I think he still is to Nigeria, to Nigerians, and especially to also to the African diaspora. So I have to remind them that yes, a lot of people know MacArthur, Ford Foundation, Open Society, and other things. But probably MKO Abiola in Nigeria was probably one of our most generous Nigerians. Probably he has done as much as the others have done, but we really don't know him. But MKO Abiola was someone that he has built. I mean, it wasn't surprising that in 1993 he won the general elections, and he won it in a way that was a big surprise for many people. A big surprise because he won in almost in every part of the country. He won despite the fact that he had a vice president who was also a Muslim. But I think that one of the things that really made him to win the election was just his spirit of generosity. He was someone who was always and every time able to support anything, anywhere. If you have a church that you are building and you have run into problem, he will give you some money. If you have a mosque, if you want to go to school, and everything, he was very generous. Now, why I say this is because I think that historically, we are very generous people, and there are people who have been as more generous than probably many of the institutionalized generosity, or what now people call strategic generosity, that people think about and talk about. So when people talk about the MacArthurs and others, I think they are thinking of a different framework of generosity. But there's no doubt that Nigerians have been very, very generous, and I think that MK Abiola stands as one of the most. So I try to remind these young people whenever I meet them, so that they know that the spirit of generosity is something that has been established in Nigeria for a long time, and a lot of people do that one. But I think that, but Emiko Abiola is just one out of so many, many people who have been generous. He was probably, for me, one of the one that I think about, just because a lot of people think about the MacArthur's, the Ford Foundations, and others. But here was a very, very wealthy person who was also very generous, as more generous than probably many other institutions that we now know. But ordinary citizens, ordinary Nigerians are also very, very generous in terms of the spirit and as well as the actual work that they do and other things. And people are generous, not necessarily because they have 10 million naira that they will give to people, but I think that you just have to go to a village. If you go to the village, and you see how people, frankly, people who don't have a chicken, or they have the chicken in their house, are willing to catch one or two, slaughter it, so that they can entertain their visitors who come to them and other things. So I truly believe that generosity is part of us, part of what we have been doing. And it's something that I think that we just have to be probably better organized in doing that one, so that it becomes more institutionalized, and try to see how we can do that one. So I'll just say a few things that we at the MacArthur Foundation have done in terms of trying to organize the spirit of generosity that we find ourselves. And I'll go back to the early, maybe the early 2000, when the foundation began to work, especially in our university sector. Now, we truly believe that if you want an independent university, then part of it is that you must strive towards having an independent at least a diversified sources of income. Because if the government, if you rely 100% on funding from Abuja to do ABCD all the time, obviously Abuja will determine so many things for you. So when we started some work on universities, I think that one of the things that we tried to make the point is that we inherited a British system whereby a lot of the time we depended on government. But there are other different models whereby universities have diversified their sources of income, and therefore they have become less dependent on government. And that diversity has also given them the independence that they need in order to come with programs, come with activities, develop curriculum, elect their officials, appoint people with less and less intrusion from outside or from government itself. So that so because of that, then we started the idea of university advancement centers. But even before, so in order for us to go to the stage of even doing the university advancement center was really, universities have to have their own strategic plan, and really diversification of funding and raising of funds from other sources must be one of the things that they have to think about in other things. So then we started to train or develop the skills of people on, how are they going to establish these university advancement centers? How can they organize their alumni associations? How can they look to the corporate world? How can they look at other friends of the university to come and work with them in order to develop their own more diversified source of income and other things? So, and that, of course, it means that, you have to change our mindsets. You have to have people with the right skills, people who have the skills of marketing, of advocacy, or people who are willing to go and ask for other people. They have to cultivate their own friends and other things. And as we all know, this is not really something that is very common with our universities. University people usually are, this, scholars narrowly focused on their scholarship and other things. Anything to do with raising money and other things, really, this is not their skills. This is not what they know. So so we have to be thinking about, okay, do we need to, recruit more new people who have those kind of skills and those kind of attitude and behavior and norms that they are willing to do this and other things. So that was how we started, doing all this skills building within our university sector, trying to establish the university advancement centers. And the university advancement centers will then have various components. There are people who will focusing on alumni and organize their own alumni, set up the database, set up the mailing list, go back to, do all the profile of the alumni and other things. There are people who are looking at the corporate world and institutions. There are others who are looking at the wall of the foundations and other institutions that are important and other things. So that's the whole process that, we try to establish in trying to get this thing working and other things. And I think that, if you think about universities, if you, for example, the University of Ibadan, which is our premier university in the country, which has produced so many people in our country, and many of them are very prominent people. And many of them, if we really organize them and try to get some resources from them, and what we want from them is not, everyone doesn't have to give 1 million naira. No, if anybody can give consistently 5 million naira, 10,000 naira, that itself will now lead into the bigger money that we are looking for in other things. But I think that the one that probably the one of the most successful one that we had was at the University of Port Harcourt, because we felt at that point, especially given the position of Port Harcourt, the University of Port Harcourt in the Niger Delta, an institution that is really based in what we call the treasury base of the country itself, with all the oil companies, with all the banks and everyone and all the oil service companies that are there in Port Harcourt. There is something to call, corporate responsibility. What can you do in order to help this university, which is really, really right in your center, but in the center of gas flaring, but doesn't have electricity? How can we work with those ones? So that was how we established what we call the Friends of the University of Port Harcourt. And the idea was to really bring together many of the oil companies, the banks, the other private sector players, and trying to see, okay, how can these institutions really play a role in the development of the University of Port Harcourt itself? And that board was, for a long time, was chaired by Shell. I think that was one of the organizations, and the other one was chaired by the university, so that they can always convene together and see that. And then eventually, I think that the Friends of the University, the Port Harcourt, then became part of the University Advancement Center, and then eventually they established the University of Port Harcourt Foundation. So that was one way in which I think we try to do that. If you think of Zaria, for example, I don't know, almost there was a time in which, anybody who have studied in northern Nigeria must have gone to ABU Zaria. So become a minister, become a governor, or whatever you become, you must go to, you must have passed through ABU Zaria. So even if you just cultivate those people who are there in you and seeing them, how can they contribute to their, to their hostels? or to their classrooms, or whatever that you can think about. Even those, if they do that one consistently and effectively and efficiently, then there is a lot of resources that can actually come out within our own system as well. So that is one way in which we try to see how we may be able to, enable our universities to become more self-reliant, and how can they actually get more resources and other things. But I think part of it was also to help the universities to also, this may sound very rudimentary, but even just how to write a proposal. How can you write a proposal to foundations, to corporate world, and other things? So it's not just for MacArthur to give you money, which is good, but how can you actually become more and more important? And I think that for me, the most successful work we have done in that regard is Bayero University Kano, because at the Bayero University Kano, we taught them how to fish, and they have been extremely successful in trying to really raise funds from other sources outside of our own sources and other things. And I'm very happy and very proud of the work that we have tried to do and other things. Now, the second area of work that I thought I want to raise has to do with how the foundation uses its knowledge and skills outside of the people that it works with. So yes, universities are the one that we support all the time, but I guess because we as MacArthur program, because we have been in this field for some time, we have been approached by so many people, try to share our own experience and knowledge about how do you go about fundraising, how do you go about establishing foundations in Nigeria as well. And I think that some of you may remember the former Minister for Solid Minerals, Leslie Obiora. She was I think she was really one of the people who was so very committed to the idea of how do we stimulate philanthropy in Nigeria. And I think she established this organization called SPIN, which was about stimulating philanthropy in Nigeria. And please let me know when I'm supposed to round up. And I think we worked with her to ensure that we have given her all the knowledge, experience, resources, so that she can also go about and help other people in order to do that one. But we have also tried to share our knowledge about philanthropy by helping to establish a number of other local foundations in Nigeria. For example, we have been very deeply committed to working with the River State Community Foundation when they were about to establish that one. When the governors in northern Nigeria wanted to establish a foundation in the name of the former premier of northern Nigeria, Sir Bello, I think they relied very much on our technical skills to establish the Sir Bello Memorial Foundation. When Jais Bank wanted to establish its own foundation, I think they came to us, and we also tried to help them to establish the foundation as well. So that is another way in which we try to help with the stimulating foundations in Nigeria. So let me probably stop here so that you may have some questions and other things as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Shetima, for that overview. And it's interesting to hear how you're going to have to get people into this kind of thinking and network early in the university network. I was wondering, to kick us off, while we invite questions from the audience, thanks for sharing that example of MK Abiola. Do you think it's something in terms of entrenching a giving culture that we need to do role modeling work to maybe change the culture or get people invested in this kind of giving climate?
Yeah, certainly. I think this is critical and very important in trying to doing the role modeling, trying to show, this is something that can be done. You may have lots of money, but sometimes, you don't have money to do that one. And I think also drawing from our faith traditions is also critical and very important, because I remember one of the sayings in one of our faith traditions, which said that the best among you is the one who is most beneficial to human beings, to other human beings, So that is just trying to show that, okay, you are the best if you do this kind of work and other things. And I remember one of our faith tradition which said that, there are three things that you do when that would outlive you. Have a very good children who will always remember you and pray for you. Secondly, build something that that will continue to be beneficial to people. So like, for example, if you dig a well, you are late, that well will continue to produce and give water to other people to drink. Or if you build a clinic or a hospital or whatever you build and you leave behind, whoever benefits from that hospital or whatever that you do, those things will continue to benefit. So I think that there is also that we can also tap into our own faith traditions and try to see how can our own faith can also be beneficial to other human beings as well.
It makes a lot of sense, Dr. Shettima. Thank you very much again for sharing with us today, and we'll continue to get in comments as we go. I wanted to turn at this point potentially to our next speaker, Charles, if we are ready, unless we... I'm very honored to introduce Asha Curran, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Giving Tuesday USA. And she's going to talk to us all about the giving climate in the United States today on this very special Giving Tuesday. Here's a little bit about her.
Hi, all. That was a great introduction. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be with you for Nigeria's first Giving Summit. First, I think, right? First. I think I'm going to share my screen in a minute and talk a little bit about Giving Tuesday and some of its financial results, yes, but also put it in a slightly bigger context of what the world is experiencing right now and what Giving Tuesday has always been beyond money, and what's different about this year and what we're observing about giving. And then I would love to take any questions or comments from anybody who is in the room there. And I'm really sorry that I couldn't be with you all in person. And I hope that I will be at some point in the future. So let's see if I can do this correctly without messing it up and share my screen. Maybe I can't. Bear with me. For some reason, it won't let me. That is a shame, but that's okay. I'll just talk through it instead. So Giving Tuesday was started in 2012 as a very simple idea, a day to give following the American days of Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which is funny to think of now because, of course, the movement is so global. The United States is just one country of the 70 plus countries that take part in Giving Tuesday now, and Giving Tuesday looks just like those places. In every place it exists, it's completely unique and yet is unified by the same shared mission of creating a more generous world. And since 2012, it has grown by enormous numbers, by every possible metric every year, not only by dollars, but that is usually the first thing that people think of. So last year, so Giving Tuesday 2019, this was before the pandemic, Giving Tuesday raised almost $2 billion here in the United States. That's an extraordinary amount of money, given that that money was not money that was given by millionaires or billionaires or big philanthropists, but just by regular everyday people with a fairly small average gift size. But it was so many people coming together to do their part that it added up to that enormous number. It's also interesting to note that Giving Tuesday inspires people to give in more than one way. So they might give money, but they will also share on social media. They'll also discuss giving with their families and their communities. They'll give their time, they'll give their advocacy. the very least way that somebody tends to participate in Giving Tuesday is just giving money. So that's a really important part of it. And over half of people who give on Giving Tuesday report that they do it and that they enjoy it because they really enjoy the feeling of being part of something bigger than themselves, which is really lovely. And I think really important to understand why Giving Tuesday is successful. So Giving Tuesday is now a global generosity movement, and it unleashes the power of people and organizations to transform their communities and their world. Giving gives people a sense of power and agency, and I think that's especially important at a time when we're all feeling so out of control so much of the time, and so uncertain and so anxious. Giving Tuesday is present in over 75 countries officially, and unofficially there is Giving Tuesday activity in every single country and territory on Earth. And we are so proud and happy to have Nigeria as one of those countries. The leaders of those countries are all interconnected with each other. They all share ideas and best practices year round. And that's a really important part of what accounts for Giving Tuesday's success as well. They're not all just acting in their own silos, in their own countries. They're really learning from each other every day of the year. So we think of Giving Tuesday as a big day of celebration of something that exists all year round. So where does that bring us to this year? We've learned a lot since the pandemic, and obviously it's been a very, very challenging time, and we have not really known what to expect a lot of the time. But I think that most of my advice can be boiled down to don't retreat at this particular time. I think there can be a temptation to say, well, we'll sit this out. This giving season, this Giving Tuesday, because people are experiencing economic uncertainty, because they're experiencing social uncertainty. And that's just what we shouldn't do, right? Now is the time to really make the case for why people should be generous. And the reason that that's true is that people want to be generous. Being generous is actually a way that people deal with anxiety and uncertainty. It helps them. So it's actually an act of generosity to give people the opportunity to be generous to you. And, I think all year long, what we've seen is generosity be an antidote to isolation and fear and division. At the very beginning of the pandemic, we saw generosity springing up everywhere, all over the world, in the form of organizations doing important work, but also in the form of just regular people, regular citizens who immediately, right from the beginning, began to look out for their neighbors, for their communities, and for perfect strangers, and not just their own families and loved ones. They were worried about others as well as themselves right from the beginning. So in May, we launched a special Giving Tuesday called Giving Tuesday Now, and that was a really remarkable day. What made it possible was that leadership network all around the world, those 75 plus countries and hundreds of smaller local communities and coalitions made up of causes and identities that band together to further their mission. And the fact that they already existed as a community and as a network meant that in just 4 weeks, we were able to stand up Giving Tuesday Now. It happened on May 5th. And again, there was a big spike in giving in the United States and all over the world, people wanting to help, people wanting to bring healing, not just to first responders and essential workers, but really to everyone. And so the question really remains now, as the pandemic seems to go on, and it looks like it will be a while that we'll be living in these circumstances, how do you mobilize generosity when the world feels upside down, when it feels so unusual? And the factors that correlate with whether people give or not at a time like this are, first of all, how they feel about giving in general. Are they a giving person? If they are, that's not going to change. They're still going to feel generous during this particular time. Financial security, that's a big issue. It tends to be that people will give even if they are experiencing financial distress. And I always find that to be such an inspiring and heartwarming thing. But they will obviously only give as much as they can. And then a third factor is their concern about safety. So giving people ways to be generous in ways that they don't feel that they're imperiling their own health and safety or that of their loved ones. And there are so many different ways to do that, including in person, outside, being safe, following all the rules that we all know. A few other things that I think are really important to think about right now. In the United States and in my experience in other places around the world, I'm not sure actually about Nigeria, there exists this conception of donor fatigue. And donor fatigue has long been considered a big problem in the sector, that people just get tired of giving. And in our experience, that's a myth. It doesn't really exist. People don't actually get tired of giving. They might get tired of the way they're being engaged with by organizations, but they're not tired of the actual giving. So really resist being caught up in that myth. Diversify who you're approaching and what you're asking for. Give people lots of ways to engage in case they can't engage in one of the ways that you're asking. And really remember that no gift is too small. Every single gift deserves to be celebrated. Giving Tuesday was founded on the idea that everyone everywhere has something to give, that every gift is worthy, that every gift makes an impact, and that people want to express their giving in multiple ways. They want to feel deeply connected to the causes that they care about. So make them feel as if they're not just giving a financial gift, but are actually making an impact, that they're actually helping to shape the work itself. And remember that there are ways to engage on Giving Tuesday that don't involve asking for money if that feels like it's not the right thing. Kindness initiatives, celebrating the work of others, amplifying the voices of the givers themselves. At this particular time, providing resources to help people and to help communities and to provide virtual interactions and experiences. Everybody's tired of being online all the time, but at the same time, people are yearning for meaningful ways to be online. So create those experiences that really make them feel energized and rewarded instead of exhausted at the end. Make a case for your relevance, right? How important you are right now. And I think it's really important to understand too that you are relevant if you are not an organization that is feeding or sheltering people or providing direct assistance that's related directly to COVID or the COVID situation. So arts organizations, culture organizations are so important right now and are bringing a different kind of healing, mental health healing and beauty and art into people's lives and homes that is equally important right now. Be authentic to your own mission. Really be honest about the challenges of what you're facing and how you're responding. Be honest about the urgency, that this is really important, that a lot of NGOs are really in trouble, that even as people are very generous right now, they are also experiencing their own crises. And organizations are still badly in need of resource, and governments tend to be less involved in keeping nonprofits afloat than they used to be. So when you invite people to participate in your work in a variety of ways, you are creating threads of connection, and really that's what Giving Tuesday is all about. Giving Tuesday is actually about humans connecting with each other, and I think we need that now more than ever. So think of Giving Tuesday. I think of Giving Tuesday, or I think of generosity, not as a dividing line between those who have and those who need, but instead an expression of solidarity, an expression of our shared humanity, and the fact that we're all in this together, and we will only ever get out of this together and unified. So I would be delighted to. Hello. Sorry, I couldn't share my screen. My computer wouldn't let me. It was my fault completely. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Asha. Good to see you.
Happy Giving Tuesday.
Yeah, we wish you the same. Okay, so something fascinating you mentioned while speaking. Now, you said last year in the US alone, at least $2 billion was raised. and not by big donors, right? Okay, so now looking at in Africa, we're used to giving. We give, we have strong family structure that support each other and all that. But just as Dr. Shetima mentioned, how do we get organized? So, for example, how do you get to the point where you are able to know, oh, this is what was given on Giving Tuesday, for example? So, at the micro level, as an organization, then as a country, how do you get that organized to be able to track what was
It's really hard.
given generally?
It's really hard. We have worked for 7 years to be able to collect the information that we collect, and even what we have now is not a full picture. So in the United States, and I think this works slightly differently in different countries, but in the United States, donations are processed through various platforms, giving platforms, payment processors, many of them, not just one or two or three, but dozens and dozens and dozens. And so the only way that we can count that number that we came up with is by forming relationships with all of those platforms and then asking them to tell us how much they processed on Giving Tuesday, and then adding all of those numbers together. And so even when I say it's not everything, we don't get numbers from every single platform. There's a lot that we don't count. So very likely it was significantly more than $2 billion. And then in addition, what it doesn't count is big gifts, right? If there are those big philanthropists making those gifts, but they're not transferring millions of dollars via PayPal, right? And so we aren't able to measure those either. So it's a very imperfect science, but we are really trying to use that data not just to understand how much was donated, but also what does it say about giving behaviors? What does it say about what drives giving, what inspires giving, what doesn't inspire giving? We know that Giving Tuesday givers, for example, are more likely to give again. And so that's really interesting information. And once we know that, we can then say, well, why? What is it about Giving Tuesday that encourages people to become givers, not just once, but over and over again? And then we have theories of why that is. My theory of that is that it's very rewarding to give as part of a collective movement, right? And not giving in isolation, but giving, with the whole world is really moving and profound experience. And so we can only start theorizing about that once we actually know the data, and that's where those numbers come from. So and we've been trying to travel around the world and learn how this process works in different countries, because it's different in a lot of countries. In some places, most of the giving is offline, and in some places, most of it is what they call informal, which is what you're referring to, that in Africa and different countries, there are all kinds of strong giving traditions. They're just really hard to measure. And I think people don't pay enough attention to them because they're not transactional. They're not based in money. And so they don't get enough credit, but they're actually really important for keeping a community and a society strong and resilient and caring about each other. And that's actually something that you do much better than we do in the United States.
True. Well, as they say, if it's done in one place, then it can be done in somewhere else. So if in the US you're able to track such giving, I'm sure in Africa we'll be able to track when we put in all our efforts. Okay, so I have one final question for you, which I'll be displaying on the screen. Can you see that on the screen? Okay.
Yes, were there some learnings about how giving trends change? High Accountability Lab, South Africa. Honestly, what I learned, the main thing that I learned is that people are generous. We knew that people were generous during disasters, right? That we've always known. But I might have theorized that people are generous about disasters that are happening far, far away, not disasters that are affecting them in that moment personally. And what I learned is that they are equally generous then, and that they will be generous over and over, even if they're worried about their own income, worried about their own job. And it doesn't always take the form of giving money, but it sometimes takes the form of cooking for neighbors or checking in on neighbors, making sure that people aren't socially isolated. So I don't worry about giving trends. I think that when people can give, they will give, regardless of the circumstances, regardless of tax policy. People will give. I think it's our job to really give people lots of opportunities for different ways to give, and to really make them feel thanked and involved, and that they are part of the positive impact. The reason that Giving Tuesday is so successful is that it really makes people understand that no matter how little they have the ability to make a positive impact on the world. And that's a very powerful feeling. So offer people that feeling and it'll be a success.
Well, thank you very much, Asha. It's been nice talking with you, and I'm sure everyone who is on this call right now has learned something. Now, talking about, okay, so talking about giving climate and all that. So, Mr. Oyebisi will be coming to talk to us about giving climate in Nigeria and what the government should do. So we're very particular about what the government can do. And in the US, there are incentives for giving, even from the government. So what can the Nigerian government do? That's what Mr. Oyebisi will be talking to us about in a few minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the opportunity to be able to speak today. From what we do know is that Nigerians like to give, and they give a lot. A recent analysis of about 110 nonprofits that have given between March and June 2020 during the peak of the COVID period. We noticed that they've been able to raise and spend over 300 million and reaching about 2 million Nigerians across 206 local governments and I think about 13, 14, 15 states. Now that gives you a big picture as to what can be mobilized through individual giving. And that, I think, fits so well into Giving Tuesday and how we've seen individuals giving. But now we need to look at what should the environment for giving look like, especially in Nigeria and by extension, Africa. At the moment, there's no regulatory framework that helps or incentivizes giving. What do I mean by that? If an average individual gives to a nonprofit in Nigeria today, that is not tax deductible. We know that government needs money, and that part of the ways how government gets money is through taxes. So sometimes some of these taxes they've been waived for us as nonprofits. But I do think that if nonprofits will continue to support government in their quest to bring about development or to attain the sustainable development goals, then we need a regulatory framework around individual giving, something that incentivizes or that makes me want to give more. Moment is still not straightforward. Sometimes you are hearing that you don't have to pay tax VAT as a non-profit, and sometimes you're hearing you have to pay VAT as a non-profit. So we have to get the tax regulation right, so a non-profit knows which taxes they have to pay. Of course, non-profits have to pay their pay as you earn. They have to deduct withholding tax for consultants. Issues around VAT we have to think through that, because what we do know and what we are hearing now is that there are some goods that are only VAT deductible, and those are provided for in the Financial Act. So we have to look at that. We have to pay attention to the Financial Act, but we need government to help in getting that regulatory system right for taxes. Again, one thing is we should know is that regulation must inspire and maintain trust in the activities of nonprofits, where mainly is an organization or a sector that thrives a lot on the trust earned from citizens, and that's why citizens can give to us, because they believe that money they've given to us, we would use it for the purposes we've said we would use them for. So we need laws that can help, or a regulatory framework that can help to maintain and continue to enrich and build that public trust in the good work that nonprofits do. Anything short of that would stifle the sector and would mean that we can't provide the needed support to government. I mean, for instance, look at the statistics I just gave. We've got about 80,000 nonprofits across the country from an anecdotal data that I can glean, and 110 of them have spent 300 million naira. How much would the 80,000 have spent during this COVID period alone? And that speaks to issue around us getting data. Nonprofits will now need to learn how to report their work effectively and how to keep data that can help us to show the economic impact of the sector. I was really impressed when the President Asha was talking about Giving Tuesday and how they've been able to work with the private sector, fintech, and a couple of organizations or industries around Giving Tuesday, so that they can have access to the right data that they need to have. And that's, she said, according to her, this has taken them for like 7 years. I'm sure we can get there, but nonprofits themselves now need to track the right metrics for their work, from the income they make from the expenditures and from who is giving us what, is it, and the sources of their income, so that we can again begin to use that information, one, to show the economic impact of the sector, and to also show how much good the sector is doing. One thing that we also must pay attention to is online giving. For you to give in Nigeria, I think we don't have too much of those platforms for you to be able, ease of giving. We should start thinking about ease of giving. And when you think of ease of giving, we have to think about making giving easy and seamless via online platforms. There are two issues that we must pay attention to. One is security, and the other is privacy of, in the use of these platforms, and also as an end user. Because, what we've seen is, if I'm going to give on this platform, is it secure? What happens to my data? And we're glad that, we do have a data regulation policy now, 2019 in Nigeria, and there are conversations on having that turned into law at this moment. But by and large, what have I said in summary? We need to find a way of incentivizing giving. Two is we need to get our tax systems right, such that nonprofits can know which taxes they are to pay. And once they know that, they also know which ones they are exempted for 110%. I've also said that regulation must inspire public trust, meaning that any regulation that is not inspiring public trust or maintaining public trust in our work, then that regulation is not fit for the sector. Again, regulation must be targeted. It must be targeted because, the activities of nonprofits vary, from the traditional nonprofits to the religious nonprofits to associations to the media. All activities vary, and regulation must be targeted at ensuring that there's an enabling environment for us to do our work effectively. I've also said that nonprofits must put their house together in terms of ensuring that they keep their books properly, they keep records that can help to show their impact, and also to demonstrate how they are using the funds that they have received. I've mentioned online giving and the need for us to pay attention to security, and the need for us to also pay attention to privacy. One last thing, and which would be my final thoughts on this, is nonprofits must now engage government more professionally and in ways that ensures that issues that we have around regulation are brought to the table. There are evidences around them, and we can sit down together and find ways of ensuring that whatever regulation or laws come out, they are good for the sector, and especially the people whose issues we represent as nonprofits. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oyebisi. Is that a little bit better? I think in particular for those great lessons around how to make giving more easy and seamless while still protecting people's privacy and data. And indeed also your insights around how to inspire public trust through regulation. I think lots of lessons there for many of our countries. So thank you very much for your time and your wisdom today during the summit.
My pleasure.
We now have the pleasure of moving along and introducing our next speaker. So Katia Shila Nwato is next, and she is the founder of the Philanthropy Circuit, and she's going to be talking to us about giving trends in Nigeria. Here's a little bit more about Katia.
Hear me. Thank you for having me at the inaugural Annual Giving Summit in Nigeria. I will be taking you through my presentation, and I'm hoping that I can share my screen shortly. Just bear with me. Hopefully I can figure this out. And I'm hoping that you can now see my slides. It will be good to get confirmation. Please let me know if you can see my slides. Great. So over the next few minutes, I will be sharing some of the major giving trends in Nigeria and more broadly in Africa. But first, I thought it would be useful to examine the broad development challenges that we face as a country, and then use the giving trends to highlight some key opportunities in the giving landscape. If anything, I hope that this will at the very least shed more light on a topic that we rarely discuss and hopefully inspire some of us to action. So first, here's the bad news. Nigeria has some of the worst development indicators. Despite a lot of development assistance, foreign investment, and our own revenue base. The government, as you know, is managing a teeming youth population that has high unemployment and dwindling resources. And apart from not having enough resources to truly cater for every citizen, the challenge is that sometimes these resources are not managed effectively. So with this sort of background, you're probably wondering, what does your giving or my giving have anything to do with this? Well, your single donation or gift of your time probably can't fix any of these challenges. But when combined as a whole together with others, giving can really be a movement. It can be a force of good, and it can certainly make a difference, no matter how small. And you may think that your giving is a drop in the ocean, but don't forget that it only takes a drop to create a ripple effect. And ripples do indeed create waves. But I'll come back to this idea of giving once I paint a bit of a clearer picture of the challenges that we face. According to the 2019 Human Development Index, Nigeria currently ranks 158th out of 189 countries in the world. This is an index that looks at life expectancy, education, and per capita income, and provides a composite score, which is captured in the graph, when you look at the green line and the different scores along that line. And so what we see here is that our HDI in Nigeria is actually increasing, but at a very small incremental rate. So yes, we've made slight improvements over the past 10 years, but not enough to sustainably change things on the ground. So there's certainly room for improvement as we strive to really live up to our nickname, the Giant of Africa. Now, the next slide you might find a bit ironic, but the Giant of Africa ranked 43rd out of 52 African countries, according to the Sustainable Development Goals Index. If the previous slide did not convince you that something needs to change, that we need more action and resources for development, let's hope that this slide does it for you. So here we're looking at the SDG index rankings of 6 African countries. And this is an index that helps to analyze how countries are performing across all 17 sustainable development goals. Now, 162 countries participated in this global assessment, and Nigeria ranked 159th. So quite literally 4 spots from being the last on the list. But what I'd really like you to pay attention to on this slide are those yellow dots and green dots on the table. The yellow dots represent the worst performing SDGs for each country, while the green dots represent the best performing SDGs. And the arrows next to the dots indicate whether performance is decreasing, stagnating, or experiencing some level of improvement. Now, if you hone in on the Nigeria column, you can see all those yellow dots with arrows indicating a stagnating performance. And these are in areas that are quite critical for a country's development. So we're looking at good health and well-being, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, industrial innovation and infrastructure. Now, I can do the typical things that we Nigerians like to do and compare us to the other countries on the table, but I'll leave that conversation for another day. But what is certainly clear is that all these countries are struggling across the same areas in development. The only difference is that Nigeria is stagnating a bit more than others. So what are the opportunities? I've painted a very grim picture. And I know that in terms of solutions, there's a wide range here when we talk about improving development, improving indicators of the SDGs or our Human Development Index. And the government certainly has its role to play. But I also believe in the power of the citizen, in the power of civil society and philanthropy. And so I'd like to talk about giving a bit more from a cultural context. Some of the speakers have alluded to this a little bit, but I see that this narrative is missing when we talk about data in philanthropy, and especially when we talk about African philanthropy or African giving. So the question that I'm posing, to myself and to all of us is who gives in Nigeria? Who's a generous person in Nigeria? Who offers help to strangers? Who donates money? Who provides, their expertise to a friend? Like Asha mentioned, this is really about generosity and kindness. But in Nigeria, can we really say that the North gives more than the South, or that millennials give more than generation, Z or X? We don't really have the country level data to tell that story yet. So it's a big gap for us as a country when we really try to understand giving trends. And, I also think that in trying to identify who gives or who's a philanthropist in Nigeria, you're really asking a question like, who eats food? Because in one way or the other, we all do these things. And so my answer to that question is that every Nigerian gives. And I think each of our speakers have actually iterated that every Nigerian gives because it is in our nature, it's in our culture. And I've highlighted on this next slide 4 major categories that I believe most people fall into. And just to be clear, again, we're talking about generosity, kindness. We're really not talking about more structured forms of giving here. So giving in this sense, we're looking at a Nigerian who's a member of his immediate or extended family. We're looking at the community. We're looking at their faith groups and the workplace. So indeed, giving is embedded in our way of life, not just as Nigerians, but more broadly as Africans. You may have heard the term Ubuntu, which is this concept of oneness and solidarity that we feel as Africans. And Ubuntu is actually real. My next slide will hopefully explain that. According to the World Giving Index published by the Charities Aid Foundation, which you can see here, some data on the slides, Nigeria ranked 16th out of 146 countries. Now, compared to my previous slides, this is a breath of fresh air. We seem to be doing something right. But this also tells us in a way that wealth, or whatever one defines as prosperity, doesn't necessarily come before being generous or giving to others. And what I mean by that is that, being wealthy is not a prerequisite to being kind, to give to others, or to help. It also tells us a little bit about our culture and how we just may be innately designed to help each other. Important to note too that those who were surveyed for this particular index were everyday people. So this wasn't looking at high net worth individuals. It wasn't looking at foundations. The people who responded to the survey were you and I. In order to establish this ranking, I also thought it was important to share that the survey is looking at 3 giving behaviors. So they're asking these following questions. In the past month, have you helped a stranger, donated to a charity, or volunteered your time? It doesn't ask how much did you give, or how often, or what causes do you give the most. And those are surveys that we need to start conducting now in Nigeria, because there's a big gap when it comes to understanding the details about our individual giving. Some organizations are beginning to do this work, but it's still at a continental level. And with time, I'm hoping that we begin to see more country-specific studies that really examine giving behaviors at the national and even the subnational level. Looking at the data a bit more closely from this report, they found that the most common giving behavior across all countries was helping a stranger. In fact, 7 out of the top 10 countries where people are most likely to help a stranger are all in Africa, and you can see them in the table on this list. So more than likely, and again, this is my own perception, is that this is connected to the principle of or philosophy of Ubuntu that most African cultures practice, this sense of oneness and solidarity that we express through our compassion for others, our humility, and just this sense of building community and making sure that everyone is okay. So for me personally, without a doubt, Nigerians are generous people. So next, I would like to look at some data that is a bit more aggregate, but I think it's still important for this discussion. The next few slides are looking at data across Africa, but Nigeria is one of the countries that were surveyed. So according to the Global Trends in Giving report this year, the top 10 causes that people from these 5 African countries supported were those that you can see on the right hand of the slide, with issues concerning children and youth topping that list. Now, giving levels across these countries ranged from less than $100 to over $10,000. So this sort of gives you a sense of the range of giving across these countries. And you can also see here on this slide that over 60% gave less than $100. And I think that's a key trend to note, is that a lot of us are giving smaller amounts. And a lot of us are also helping strangers and when we're donating to causes that we support. But what was a bit disappointing in this data is that issues concerning women and girls are the least funded when it comes to individual donations. And as a gender equality advocate, for me, this was personally disappointing. But it's similar to what we found with the performance of SDG 5 on the index that I showed earlier, where across all the 6 countries who were measured on the SDG index that had those worst performing indicators, gender equality was actually one of those worst performing. So let's dig into this data just a little bit more so we can tease out a few trends. These are some of the other key findings that were found as part of this survey and report. 30% of donors in Africa prefer to give online with a credit or debit card. And I think this goes to the point made earlier about, online platforms and online donations. 12% of donors gave on Giving Tuesday in 2019, up from 9% in 2017. And I think this is a good indication that Giving Tuesday as a campaign is gaining ground across the continent. 80% of donors in Africa volunteer with NGOs. Apparently, this is the highest rate in the world. And for me, this is outstanding. 37% say social media has an impact on their giving, with WhatsApp actually being not the most used platform, but the platform where people are influenced to give. So if there's anyone listening to this and thinking about how to get or attract donors, WhatsApp is a great platform to get the message out, to different donor categories about the work that your organization is doing. So these giving trends, really lay out some unique data points that if you're a nonprofit, like I said, looking to attract donors, what platforms to use to engage, and perhaps how to also attract volunteers to your cause. So I'm just going to talk about a few sort of trends looking at the broader landscape. And I try to identify them, a bit earlier. So first, there's the need or the challenge. As I said, we have a lot of gaps in various sectors, top of which are health, gender equality, and sanitation. And then another trend, obviously, is technology. Social media has changed everything about our lives and has made it so much easier to donate to causes or to sign up for, volunteer opportunities. And there are a lot of these platforms springing up at the moment. And I think technology has also paved the way and helped to democratize giving more than ever before, and also negate this idea that we have to be financially wealthy in order to give, because giving is so much more than money. And I also think Giving Tuesday is one of those platforms that has really helped with this. I've been watching the movement over the past few years and just really seeing the Giving Tuesday campaign grow year on year. There's also a growing ecosystem of support for various actors in the space. And I think this ecosystem is a very important element of how philanthropy or giving gets shaped in a country. So not only do we have Giving Tuesday, but we have several organizations like Triple NGO or YBC, our speaker earlier, who's playing a role in trying to coordinate and organize the sector. And then, of course, Philanthropy Circuit, an organization that I founded, also tries to be one of those resources that people can go to for guidance. And lastly, on this slide, although I haven't touched on it as much, transparency plays such a key role in building trust between donors and recipients, or donors and volunteers and organizations as well. So something to also pay attention to. So other trends that I think I already highlighted but are kind of critical to remember, as we go on to this next segment, is that every Nigerian gives. And this is my last slide. Every Nigerian gives. We are the 16th most generous country in the world, according to the World Giving Index. We are the 7th country in the world in terms of helping others. Again, that really, for me, just speaks to our spirit of Ubuntu. And the 4 top causes we support on a more continental level are children and youth, community development, hunger and homelessness, and education. Another important indicator is that we're giving mostly in small amounts, under $100. I think the survey said that about 60% of Africans are giving in smaller amounts. And our participation in Giving Tuesday is increasing year on year. So again, this is a really good sign of progress. Most of us prefer to give online, but also in cash or bank transfers. And WhatsApp has the most impact on our giving decisions. And finally, we in Africa have the highest rate of volunteering in the world. So with this, I hope you can see the opportunities and feel a bit inspired to give, and knowing that no gift is too small, because there's so many needs and challenges that the country faces. And as Nigerians, it's already part of who we are. And there are a lot of resources available to you, like Giving Tuesday, Triple NGO, Philanthropy Circuit, and other partners who can help guide you on your giving journey. So over to you, Charles, for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I was lost in the in the data, but lovely, lovely. And I think after the summit, we'll definitely reach out to Philanthropy Circuit, maybe to collaborate and work on some of this data, maybe gather more, so that we'll be able to even make projections on how giving would be maybe in upcoming years. Okay, so I have one question. I don't know if there are other questions. Let me see. Okay, but I have one question. So one thing I was looking at for in your presentation, I wanted to see if there would be like a how the COVID-19 pandemic affected giving. So maybe look at giving before COVID-19, maybe during COVID-19 pandemic, during those lockdown period, then after. So how are we now? Are we better givers now than we were before COVID-19? Because I know that during COVID-19 there were a lot of solidarity, people wanted to help and all that. So how did that shape the giving trend in Nigeria?
Thanks for that. So Philanthropy Circle is actually working on a report on this that would hopefully come out, first quarter in 2021, because it's one of the things that really intrigued me, looking at the impact of the pandemic. Those same months that Oyebisi mentioned, between March and May, there was such a spike in nonprofit campaigns, fundraising campaigns, and there was so much buzz on social media. So we definitely took note of that spike in giving and interest in giving, I would even say, and hopefully putting some data points together on what we've been able to collect so far and share with you, early 2021. But for now, I can just provide, anecdotal evidence just based on what I and my team kind of monitored and watched, not just even individual giving, but of course, donor giving, philanthropy. I do think that 2020 was probably a year of reckoning where Nigerians probably stepped into philanthropy a bit more than previous years.
Okay, so I think because of time, we'll just move on to the last segment of this summit. So I believe that by next year, we'll be able to organize a better, bigger, and maybe physical summit. I believe that COVID-19 will be completely out of the way. So thank you very much for this presentation, Kaja, and we hope to collaborate on more activities going forward. And the person coming next, we'll be talking about giving. I've known Crystal quite a bit, and the first time I heard her story, how she's able to mobilize resources locally to help children, I was shocked because I was like, in Nigeria, you can raise funds like that, but she's here, so she will be sharing with us how she has been able to raise funds locally. And so it will be a fireside chat with her, not a presentation style. So we'll have questions, and if participants have questions, so you can send it to us through email, through our Facebook stream or YouTube stream. So right now, I'll just play a short profile of Crystal. So for those who watched her BBC feature recently, I'm sure you'll be happy to meet with her right now. Stay tuned. All right. Welcome, Krista. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here today. I'm so excited. I've learned so much over the last, I think about almost 2 hours. Thank you to everyone out here, and thank you for having me.
Okay, so I think we just go straight into it.
Okay.
So before Shina asked that question, so just share with us your story. I know, then when we are learning about pitching, startup pitching, they tell you having a personal story to what you do is more impactful. And I know that what you do is connected to your life story. So maybe just briefly share that story so that everyone will understand where you are coming from.
Okay, so in a nutshell, because I believe that there's so much we have to say in 20 minutes, I had a daughter that had a congenital limb deformity, and then the limb had to be amputated. As a result of the amputation, I decided to start an organization to advocate, but more importantly, help children with disabilities to live life to the fullest. So I'm a mother of an amputee. I work with children with that have been amputated and children with disabilities in general. So yes, that's my story.
Okay, Shina, you want to shoot? I think you're on mute. Shina, check your mic.
Apologies.
Okay.
Reflection of our times. Thank you, Crystal, and lovely to have you with us today. One of the things I thought we could start off with was you have said previously that disability is only a thing of the mind. And I was wondering why that's your starting point and what you meant by that.
So again, because I realized that working with my daughter and other children that I've worked with that have disabilities, nothing stops them. They can do anything they want to do. So a good example is my daughter has one leg amputated and she uses an artificial limb. And even with that, she's able to ride a bicycle. She swims very well. She dances ballet. I have children whose fingers are amputated and yet they can write. So for me, I know that it's something that has to do with your mind. And also when you even bring it into giving or even, expecting people to be generous or people to reach out to you, it first starts from the place of your mind. So whatever can't limit you in your mind, you really will be able to achieve.
Amazing. And I think that also, if you're looking at your story, that's certainly that sense of positivity and optimism. It's something you've taken into Out on a Limb, which might be a nice way to talk about that. It's an awareness project that you run now. I understand 20 places and 20 million people, which is phenomenal. How did you grow this kind of monstrous movement? What were some of the steps along the way?
And honestly, that's really why I really loved when Kajal talked. And it's really a build up from all what the speakers have been saying today. First, it starts with your community and your family. So when we started Out on a Limb, we just really wanted to reach out to a little community and basically let them know and create an awareness on disability and how persons with disability are living lives to the fullest, and that nothing should limit them. And we're just 100 people that started in one place. And so after a while, friends started, leaving the country, traveling to different places, but still wanted to be a part of the movement. And the question was, how do we ensure that we can do this on a bigger platform and ensure that they still can be a part of it? So people started volunteering their time and their finances and, wanting to be the ones to lead it in different locations around the world, to be a part of the movement. Because really, once you have a value that you're creating and people can key in to it, and also, when Asha said, we don't have donor fatigue. It's really how do you engage the people that want to generously be a part of what you're doing. So we then started getting points and volunteers across different locations, and hoping that, you know, they will be able to lead the same thing. So from one location, it became 2 locations, it became 3 locations, first in Nigeria and then outside the country. And then, you know, the number of people that started being a part of Autonolim, you know, started increasing. And also we realized that, you know, it's not just about a physical connect where people, you know, have to come together in a group. And so we started leveraging social media to see how to drive the scale of the work that we do. So that's how we actually increased the number of people that were a part of it.
Okay, sorry, Sheena. I have 2 questions for you, Krista.
Tell me.
Now, I think recently I saw, I think you guys did something with, was it Shell? Was it Shell or Chevron or Total? I can't remember, but with another company. And I'm sure that's something that most NGOs, Nigeria-based NGOs, want to do, be able to collaborate with the private sector and all that. So how were you able to penetrate? How were you able to achieve that kind of collaboration and support from them?
I would say 3 major things, really. I think the first thing is being transparent with the work that you do and sharing the work that you do with everyone else. And everyone, not necessarily, and I think social media has made it very, very easy for us to do, to be able to put the work that you do out there transparently out there. So that's the first thing I would say. So it's being transparent and being able to tell your own story. The second thing would be the power of collaboration. So the first time I got into a meeting with you know, Shell, NNPC, and NNPC, it was through a collaboration with the Nigerian network of NGOs. So they organized an event, and you know, in collaboration with SNEPCO, and we were at that meeting. I think I attended the meeting for more than 3-4 years, where, you know, you share your story, you talk about what you do and all of that. And until the point where, you know, he struck a chord, and, you know, they could see value and where we could collaborate to do good. And that's where, you know, we started engaging and talking with them. So I would say the first thing, like I said, is transparency. The second thing is the power of collaboration. For those of us that are, you know, SDG, that's goal 17. So partnering for goals, we're partnering with the Nigerian network of NGOs to make this happen. And then finally, I would say, credibility. A lot of NGOs do not really want to, you know, ensure that they are audited or, you know, have their right governance in place and all of that. They look like they're really big, especially when we are, you know, starting small. But again, I think one of the things we've learned today, as we think generosity is not just about money. Again, you can collaborate with organizations that can help you, you know, with the right governance that you need for your organization. So I would say those are some of the things that helped the collaboration and partnership with NNPC SNEPCO work. Really.
Okay, so obviously, Krista, you are doing an important work, and very important. All works, all courses are important, but yours, every time I read about your story, I'm touched, really, because one, it deals with children, and also as if it brings life to these children. Now, how's your work been? How's your collaboration been with the government? Has there been any support from the government? Also, do you think there's a strong support system for not-profit generally?
Have we worked with government before? Yes, it's an emphatic yes. Especially in Lagos State, there is an association, or there's an agency called LASODA. LASODA is the Lagos State Office of Disability Affairs. And so we've worked with them before. So that's really where the work we do, the agency that we're linked with. And we've gotten funding, and we've also gotten, you know, collaboration in terms of, you know, they being a part of the events that we do. However, when it comes to that, I can say that there's a little bit more that we can leverage. Over the last 1 year, we're tending towards doing a lot more advocacy with respect to the work that we do. So yes, we're now beginning to connect with government and seeing how we can do a little bit more, how we can, you know, partner together with them to, especially in terms of children with disability being able to have access to inclusive education. And right now we just got some funding from disability rights funds to be able to expand that work that we're doing on inclusive education for children with disability. So I'm sure that this would definitely help us to engage more with government and see a lot more positive results. There was a second question you asked. I'm not sure I remember.
Okay, as I said, do you think there's the support system for NGOs, not profit generally? Do you think it's strong enough in Nigeria?
Do I think it's strong enough? So when you say support system, I honestly, I think there are pockets of support systems. So for me, I would say you have the organizations like Nigerian Network of NGOs, which we are a part of, which I think should be more NGOs should be a part of that, because you learn a whole lot from that. But there also, Association of the Blind or Association of Persons with Limb Deformities, because of the work that you do. I think we can be stronger together. And that's why I'm really excited about this Giving Summit, because if we can only come together more, I think there's so much more we can do with partnerships. Because, for instance, I work with children that have been amputated. There are other organizations that work, in the area of, the blind. And look at all the beautiful data that, has been shared with us on trends from philanthropy circuits. There's so much we can do together. And that's why you're not going to be the only one reaching out to them after this summit. I'm going to be connecting and seeing how we can even make this, really bigger for the work that we do, and, be able to put it together. But for
Awesome.
anyone that is listening to me, that is not a part of the Nigerian Network of NGO, I think you should be a part of that organization. And Charles, I think that was where we first met.
Yes.
Also, yeah.
True. I think the website is nngo.org.org, but I will check and share it here. Sheena, you can continue with your questions, Sheena.
Thanks. And yeah, so inspiring to listen about all those collaboration advancements, Crystal. Something tempering that we heard a little bit earlier from Katya was that with funding categories, the ones around girls and women often perform the worst. And I was wondering if you ever found that, and if so, what were some of the things that you used to buck this trend, to get over this kind of disability, of this hampering of the sector?
When I looked at that trend, I smiled a little bit, because I'm like, yes, children are ahead. And then, I saw something on education. I saw something on health and well-being, and then, women and girls. So firstly, I think we are in children. People tend to turn towards children a little bit more. You can't help yourself as a child. You can't talk by yourself. So really, working with children, I've seen that people are a little bit more emotional when it comes to children. So just, I think about 3 days ago, we did a fundraiser for, and Charles, you're quite right, for Irede Foundation. Most of our funds come from individuals and locally also. So about 60% of the monies that we raise come from individuals and local individuals and funding. And, just putting the story out there, and you seeing that a 6-year-old or a 5-year-old got amputated, and that child can't go back to school as a result of that. In 2 days, we raised money to give the child the leg that he will be needing, or the limb that he will be needing, for him to be able to have, enjoy the holidays during Christmas, but more importantly, to get him back to school in January, so he can be in school with other people. So yes, I agree really with the trend. I think right now also, and maybe when philanthropy circuit is sharing with us, maybe first quarter of next year, you will also see that a lot of people are beginning to give to women and children, especially in, from the last week in November. There's an advocacy that started, for gender and women, specifically for the next 16 days. And you will see that there's a lot of giving, there's a lot of talking in that direction. Usually when something becomes what people are talking about, they want to be a part of that movement. And that's what we see happen March and, towards September, really, as a result of COVID-19. A lot more awareness on COVID, a lot more people talking about it, a lot more people see how it impacts them and the effect it has on them. Because when your neighbor has COVID, it's going to affect you. When your neighbor doesn't have food, it's going to affect you, because then people are going to be on the streets and all of that. So really, you just want to be a part of it. And culturally, we are a people that come together as a community. So I think all of that is impacted the giving that we've seen. But yes, we've experienced the fact that we work with children. We've experienced the fact that, we're talking education. We've experienced the fact that health and well-being is what people really want to give to. At the end of the day, or more people tend to give towards that. But really, for me, I think there's no cause that people don't want to give to. Once you're telling your story, once you're out there, once I see it connect to me, I want to be a part of it. And that's why I love Giving Tuesday, by the way, because in 2012, yes, we raised money globally through Giving Tuesday.
Amazing.
Wow.
That's really inspiring.
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Okay, so what's next for the Radio Foundation?
For us, like I said, we're going deeply into advocacy. We've realized that it's not enough to give limbs. It's not enough, for that child to have a limb, but really, we need to stop the discrimination and stigmatization that goes with disability. So we're going full-fledged into advocacy and research also. How can we make the limbs more affordable? How can we ensure that, people are bringing out their kids, even though they have a disability, and they're not keeping them back in their homes? How can we ensure that persons with disability are in places of leadership? And really, that's my newest passion and something that is really burning within me. I don't want you to learn a trade because you have a disability. I want you to make a choice to learn, a trade. So we want to see more children, women, men with disabilities being in places of leadership. Yeah. So that's our next step over the next 5 years, and effective 2021, and we're going full-fledged into it. And like I said, more inclusive education, and that's why some of the fundings that we have right now is really so exciting from the Disability Rights Funds, because it helps us to be able to drive the conversation on inclusive education. And that on the 3rd of December is International Day of Persons with Disability. And, it's talking about bringing back better, driving inclusion, driving accessibility, especially after COVID-19. So we're really excited about this work.
That's amazing. I wonder if I can jump in there with a quick follow. You, Crystal, have deep experience, I know, in marketing and comms in previous chapters. And as you were speaking, I was just thinking you're a really powerful storyteller, and that must also go to the heart of being able to create this credible narrative around the work that you do. And so I just wondered if you had any thoughts for other sort of community organizations out there around how to create that level of trust with your storytelling, making sure your story is cohesive and, keeping people informed of your advancements as an organization like yourself.
I think the first thing is, please be authentic. Be authentic, be real. It's okay. There are people that are getting the funds from the Makata Foundation and from different places, and you probably are not getting that kind of funding yet. But please be authentic. There's the thing to just want to say, okay, maybe what is selling is everything about COVID-19. So I just really want to make everything about COVID-19. So I think authenticity helps you to really tell your story and people connect with it. But if you're trying to make your story like somebody else's, then the connection will probably be lost. I think that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say is learn more about storytelling. There are a lot of courses out there that are not expensive or even free that you can get something to say and learn how to make it better. But finally, keep telling your story, because I think the more you tell your story, the better it becomes. The more you tell your story, the more it's a part of you. I honestly, if I start telling the radio story, the 2 hours that we have will not be enough for me to share with you, but it's impossible for me to tell you the radio story and you're not going to bring out your money today. And I know that you will all give to, those children to be able to get limbs to work for Christmas. So really, it's important that you keep telling your story. Please don't keep quiet about it. Just make sure that your voice is heard. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
So, Krista,
Yeah.
I know that your kind of work. I've been in that space many years. I work with SOS Children Villages for many years,
Mm.
and most times there are always protocol you need to follow to help a child. So
Yeah.
you need a gateway, maybe somebody from the family, a parent or a guardian, and all that. So, but how I'm looking at street children now. So there are some street children who are living with disabilities, some begging and all that. So is there a place for them in this whole scheme of work? So how do we reach them, or does Iredi Foundation reach out to such children who perhaps are already in the street, so they are not from a home, so to speak?
Okay, thank you so much, Charles, for that question. I'm going to address it in two ways. Yes, we've reached out to children on the street, but that's because our referral program is a community referral program where the community refers the child, that we want to give a limb. So recently, actually, the child that we're going to be working with this December is a child that was hawking on the streets and got knocked down. So the person that referred, just because he buys something from the girl, decided to refer the child to the foundation. So we have that referral system in place. People from the community telling us about, people that need limbs in their communities, and they reach out to us. Apart from the hospital programs and the awareness we create on social media, where people can actually reach out themselves. So that's one angle. So yes, we do that today. But there's a lot more that can be done. And that's where the partnership from the government comes into play. There was a time that, the Lagos State government had I won't call it a colony, but a place where they put persons, that were on the streets and didn't have a place to go. So like created like a home for them somewhere in Ebute Metta Yaba. And I visited that colony 2 years ago, and then last year actually, when I was doing my CNN interview. So, and we were able to work with that community to fix the people that needed limbs in the community. So the important thing really is community. And I don't think there are things that can happen in isolation. So if you want to make this happen, we walk through that system. So we have someone that is referring. And again, like I said, because they are children, before we can take your picture or we can go ahead and do some things, there are consent that we need to get from a guardian, or like, so working with children, you need to think child protection and all of that. So usually we find a way to connect it to the community, because even for those that don't have a home, they have a home technically. Yeah.
Okay, true. It's been a great time with you, Krista. I
Thank
think
you,
there's so
Charles.
much to there's so much to learn. So maybe one of these days, Giving Tuesday will just host you and you share your insights. So maybe for 1 hour, just chatting like this, so that people will learn, especially even for new NGOs, because I'm sure every day someone is founding an NGO in Nigeria. Every day, at least one NGO is being founded in Nigeria, and there's a lot to learn. There's so much to learn. So, any final word? So, your
Yeah.
contact for those who have asked. Sorry, for those who have asked about Iredi Foundation website. So, I'm going to put it up while she's giving her final comment now.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Giving Tuesday, for having me. One final thing that I would just want to say is the funding that you need is available in your community. And if you've listened from 2 o'clock when we started this program up until now, you would see that people are willing to give. People are willing to be a part of the work that you do, but they just need to be aware of it, and they need you need to be consistent at it. So when we started in 2012, I remember very well, the money that we raised was 250,000 naira for a whole year, with friends and families and people from the faith community and workplace and everywhere. 250,000 naira. That was all that we raised in 2012. And 50,000 naira, if you look at it, is less than five. It's about $500 or so. Yes. So we raised $500 for a whole year with all the campaign. But with consistency and all of that, you can see that, year after year, and our audited accounts are online. You can go and look at it, and you just see that it keeps getting better because more people get to know you. And once they know you, they get to like you. Once they like you, then they can begin to trust you. And so it's important for us to put that system in place. First, get known, then get to a process where we can like you, and then finally we trust you. And remember that nothing should stop you. Disability is just a thing of the mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So at this point, I'm glad that first we need, because I'm very concerned about the cost of data in Nigeria. Someone sent us a mail and said, "Can we make this event physical instead of we coming online?" I said, "Well, at least for this year, let us allow this year to go by and have COVID-19 being washed off completely. So hopefully next year we'll see how we can converge physically." So yeah, every other speaker is gone. So maybe just a final goodbye from the speakers, then while the moderators will close that. So Chris, so we'll start from Kaja. Just a final word as your goodbye.
Well, today is Giving Tuesday, so I would encourage people to go out and give. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Krista?
Nothing is too small to give. Time, money, just give.
All right, thank you so much. Sheena, did you enjoy your time?
So many lessons, Charles. So much to still think through and digest. But I think that, that broad takeout that Crystal ended on with, that, all that you need is in your community, is such a powerful statement. I think there was great advice around how to keep that authenticity culture going, to make sure, your community of people is sustainable. And also the ideas of role modeling, when Dr. Shetima was talking about MK Abiola and how we've got all these really inspiring examples of philanthropists to remind us about, the great benefits of giving. I just think a lot for us to take in, whether we are individuals fundraising or community organizations. But I would say the one thing that's really going to stay with me is the advice from Asha, that all we really need to do is provide the platforms for people to take up, and to ensure that we are giving people a creative variety of channels to choose from. And, given that this year was very much the year of the volunteer, I think in many respects, allowing for people to give you their time, as much as, whatever resources they can contribute, is that much as equally important. So yeah, thanks to everyone for all the great lessons.
All right, thank you, Sheena. It was nice having playing this role with you. So I'm sure next year you will still be available for this kind of role, or maybe a bigger role, or the sole moderator of the event.
As long as it's in Nigeria, Charles, count me in.
Okay, awesome. So thank you to everyone that have been part of this summit. This is our first time, and we understand the challenges having a virtual summit, considering the cost of data in Nigeria. And we hopefully, with your feedback, so we'll be sending out a form after this event in a few minutes. Just tell us your feedback. What did you enjoy most? What should we do better for next year and all that? And we'll try and see how we can work with your feedback. And also, if you have questions that you would have loved to ask the speakers, you can also send them in and we'll pass it across to them. And when they provide answers to those questions, we'll send it back to you. Okay, so from me is goodbye. From Giving Tuesday Nigeria is goodbye. And don't forget, today is Giving Tuesday. So it's like Christmas before Christmas. And in this type of Christmas, you give. So you can give a hug. You can give a thank you to health workers, give a smile. Just make some children happy somewhere, as Crystal is doing. So even without spending money, you can play with children and make them happy. Go and volunteer to teach in the community for 10 minutes. All right. Give money. If you have money, and I learned something this morning, you necessarily does not have to, you don't need to have much money to give money. All right. From the little you have, you could help. And you must not be 100% satisfied before you can give. Okay, so I'll just show the last comments we have from Sarah and Nene. She said, awesome summit. Really glad that I participated. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to Sarah. And please go to the Giving Tuesday website, givingtuesday.ng, and just submit the form there. You can indicate interest as an individual, a school, a family, or as an organization, and we'll have you in our newsletter and keep you informed of our future activities. All right, Sheena, any final goodbye before we leave now?
Just very, very happy Giving Tuesday wishes from my side. It's been an honor being part of this discussion and lots of learning. So thank you.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.